I want to explore the topic of force design and department plans. General Harris, you mentioned in your opening statement that Air Force fighters are older than the other services with an average age of 26 years. Is that correct?
I believe that was the comment that was made, yes.
So does that mean that sustainment costs are rising as the fleet ages and thus reducing funds that are available for modernization needs?
So there's always a tension between the modernization and the readiness, and when you start putting upgrades onto them, how much can we do per tail per upgrade and still maintain pilot absorption? So that tension for readiness and modernization will still exist, yes.
That sounds like a yes.
Yes.
Okay. So how does the procurement of F-15EX, F-35, next generation air dominance manned fighters help you avoid that downward spiral of continued sustainment cost growth?
So from a force design aspect, what we do is we look at where do we need to be with respect to the threat into the future. That mix of what is an inside force and what is an outside force is the balance that we're trying to maintain. That becomes the mix of the collaborative combat aircraft, the CCA, plus the F-15EXs. So if you think about the number of rails and the number of munitions you can put on the EX as an outside force working your way into the contested environment, there has to be a mix of both. When I mentioned in my comments about the force being out of balance, we have a great short-range fighter game right now, but it's not the inside force that we need. What we need to do is pivot to a more outside force with more rails, the F-15EX and the like. So from a force design standpoint, that's how I would answer the question. I think if there's an operational piece, I would pass it off to General Spain or General Moore as far as the cost per tail.
Before that, how important is the next generation air dominance manned fighter to your future force design?
So the next generation air dominance family of systems is critical to what we do. And what I mean by that is the technologies that are being developed within that portfolio and where we're going with the entire enterprise. It's feeding technologies and it's helped us create S&T in other areas that we're leveraging to put into other platforms and weapon systems.
I mentioned the man fighter. You talked about the family of systems. Can you speak directly to the man fighter?
I cannot, Secretary Hunter.
I want to
Look like you want to jump in, Mr.
on that one. So for our FY25 budget request, we are requesting significant funds for that, the crewed fighter part of the NGAD family of systems, and all the members of the family are leveraging the technology work General Harris described. But yeah, we have requested significant funds in our FY25 budget request to move to the next phase of the program when it comes to the crewed fighter.
What's your current assessment of whether the United States Air Force or the PLA Air Force will first field a sixth-generation manned fighter?
My assessment would be that it would be the United States, but it is the term pacing threat is, I think, a very apt term because it is a race.
Okay. General Spain, every year the committee seems to receive a request to reduce the number of manned fighters. How many fighters do you need to do your mission?
Thanks, Senator. I think the part of the last question hints at the answer to this question, and the idea is that we're reducing the number of actual aircraft fielded in order to bring on new capabilities that are exponentially greater than those we're divesting. There are limits to how much we're able to divest that we adhere to, and we continue to work with the Secretary of Defense and the combatant commands and the global force management process to ensure that the fighter fleet that we have meets the needs of the force.
Do you have an answer? I mean, do you have a direct or specific answer about how many fighters you need?
I can take that for the record, sir, but there's not a specific number of fighters. I can say that we retain between 1,900 and 2,000 fighters currently. That's the range that we're in. That is sufficient to meet today's commitments, and that will be sufficient to continue to meet the commitments going forward.
Okay. If the Air Force shuffles combat-capable aircraft like the F-15E and the F-22 into training roles due to divestments, how's that going to affect your current combat capacity?
Well, we're still working through the details of how that would actually play out if that were to occur. But the bottom line is combat-capable aircraft would be used for training, just like a training tailored aircraft. However, in extremis, if they were needed to go into combat, if they were not T-coded tails, then we'd be able to use them for combat missions if necessary.
Okay. Well, this is one of the concerns that would have stated in my opening statement. I'm sure you're all going to go read the record about it tonight, is that I just don't think we're buying enough stuff fast enough, whether it's fighters or the E-7 or munitions. I may have more on that later. Mr. Hunter, we've heard some talk about connectivity today, and in your written statement, you talk about the need to develop command and control systems for relevant contested missions. What's the fielding timeline of a resilient network for all of these fighters, drones, and future systems to talk to each other?
It's a rolling timeline. So in terms of that first increment of capability, probably in the 27 timeframe, I would say, if you were to talk about something at the level of a network capability. We have capabilities that are rolling out prior to that, and they're meaningful. So we have that for air defense already. We've already rolled out increments of capability of that system that are meaningful. But if you start talking about really being able to do entire mission threads at scale anywhere in the world, it's going to be another few years before we can really say we've rolled that out to the warfighter.
All right. What's the impact of the Air Force's inability to certify basic network modernization today, like Link 16, due to FAA roadblocks?
Well, we have a lot of challenges in test when it comes to FAA and their certification of Link 16. So that has impacted our acquisition programs like the F-22 and several others. And it's a challenge that we share jointly with the Navy, because many of our Link 16 capabilities are ones that the Navy is the program lead for, and they run into the same challenges that we do.
Okay. General Moore, I want to turn my attention now to munitions. I noted $1 billion less in the Air Force missile procurement compared to last year, even though our munition stockpiles are not where they need to be. Is the Air Force currently maximizing procurement of munitions?
Senator, we are close to maximizing procurement. We are in most of what we're talking about here are the advanced munitions, really the ones that pertain to the highly contested environment. We're in most cases within single digits, or in some cases within 20 or 24 individual procurement units of maximizing procurement. What I think is helpful for the future is, thanks to the Congress in the 24 cycle, there was additional facilitization that allowed us to increase what the Defense Industrial Base is able to procure. And so as that facilitization money takes effect, we will be able to increase procurement. I wouldn't say that we're buying every single round that's available, but we're really close. And the facilitization money that came in 24 will increase that capacity as we go through the FIDEB.
Sorry, I don't know what you mean by additional facilitization money.
Building an additional line, putting together the facilities that it takes to build more of the same thing.
And is the Air Force using multi-year procurement? I should say, I know you're using multi-year procurement for critical munitions. Can you buy more of these munitions with additional FY25 funds under that multi-year plan?
There is some additional procurement that's possible, and if it's okay, we'll take the specific numbers and the specific dollars for the record and provide those back to you by individual item.
Please do. General Harris, I want to talk a little bit about unmanned aerial systems and counter unmanned aerial systems, CUAS, known by normal people as drones. What is the plan to defend our air bases from small drone attacks? After all, we had 3 troopers killed in Jordan about 3 months ago from such an attack, and dozens of drones have overflown Langley Air Force Base in the last 6 months.
Thank you for the question. It's been almost a year since I was back from the desert, where I was the Deputy Air Component Commander, and the drone problem was very much an everyday problem for us to deal with. For the program of record, or what we have within the Air Force, the Ninja system onto this is the one that we use primarily, but it's a joint, it has to be a joint solution for this one. The Army has several systems that's out there, and quite frankly, it's the detection piece as far as some of the smaller Group 1 and Group 2, and then for the Group 3 and 5, as far as the Air Force doctrine and what we do, it's using some of our counter-air tactics and air-to-air munitions to be able to mitigate the counter-UAS or the drone threat that's out there. Some of the ones that you're seeing around Langley and the like, these are things that we have to get after. We're putting resources to those. But for right now, some of these that use the systems that I mentioned before, the Ninja system, That's one, and we also have money that's in FY '25 to start looking at some other systems that might be effective for this.
Okay. What is the Air Force plan, if any, for low-cost, one-way, large drones like we've seen from adversaries in Russia and Iran and China? I guess by low cost, I mean numbers that have only one comma in them.
Senator
Is there a
Cotton,
plan?
yeah, if I
Do you want
can.
to take that, General Spain?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As was mentioned, the problem of counter UAS is a joint, really, and frankly, coalition problem. And as we saw in Jordan, any loss of life is tragic, and our hearts go out still to our Army brothers and sisters who are impacted by that. General Kurilla and General Grinkwich at the time, General France now, are implementing procedures in the theater to increase domain awareness, which is really a key limitation in that theater. And the events in Langley or in Virginia really speak to the idea that the homeland is no longer a sanctuary, and we have to continue to pay attention to it. The systems that we've been pushing forward have largely gone to the most contested and kinetic theaters, and we have still paid attention to systems in the Pacific or in Europe. But starting with the Pacific next year, we'll field some systems from a command and control perspective, from a sensing perspective, and from a non-kinetic effector perspective. Currently, what we're doing is we're nested under the Secretary of Defense's Tiger team for counter UAS as a part of the service, and the Air Force has its own Tiger team at the HAF level that has initiated operations to support the wing commanders who are in the field today if that problem becomes a factor and they don't have the relevant capabilities at their wings. And Air Combat Command has initiated its own Tiger team for the below major command level to ensure that there's support for the commanders to deal with this threat as well.
Look like,
Senator, I was going to say there's some more things we could share with you in a different forum.
yeah, and I take all that, but some of these drones are not going to be for the little C UAS, right? But for the actual attack systems.
Yeah, more we could share on that in a separate
Yeah.
discussion.
I fear that, no one at this table, but I fear that this Department of Defense is taking its name a bit too literally. And there's not enough thinking about how offense creates its own defense.